So I'd like to kick things off here with a very simple question. And the question is, do you feel held back by the reporting in Business Central? And if you do, you're not alone. We are very excited today. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Mark Buckman, and we are launching the Cloud Replicator app. Very, very excited to have you guys here with us today. First, we're going to cover off a few objectives. We are going to learn more about the use cases for this app and how it can benefit your organization. We also have the opportunity to learn from an early adopter of the app itself to learn more about some firsthand experience. We're also going to cover off some of the concept behind the app itself, the benefits, the features, and of course, we're going to actually see how it works in real life. But first, we have a few housekeeping items. We, again, have thought about some use cases and features for this product, but again, we value your questions and feedback. So again, if you have a specific use case that you are wondering about, please get your questions in the Q&A panel. The more questions, the better. Eric Hogard will have an opportunity later in the webinar to be able to answer them. It's not often that you have a Microsoft MVP available at your fingertips. So again, get all your questions in. I'd like for you guys to find us on social media. Again, we're super excited about this app. It's not often that you have an app with that extends the reporting capability in Business Central. And so we would love for you guys to help spread the good word, get the interest out in the marketplace. We are going to be tweeting live as well. So please find us on Twitter as well as LinkedIn. It's the two social media platforms that we're active in. And then finally, following the webinar itself, we're going to have a screen will pop up for a quick 2-minute survey. Again, we highly value your feedback. We are constantly looking at improving the way that we do things. And so your feedback is very valuable to us. So my name is Mark Buckman, and I'm an account manager with EFOQUS. I've got two very special guests, and I guess I should say Eric's special because he is my boss, and he is an 8-time Microsoft MVP. He is the person behind the app, and of course, a co-founder and managing partner of EFOQUS. So Eric, a few words.
Well, I'm looking forward to showing you guys how this app is working and how you can benefit from using it.
Great. Eric, if there was one thing that people don't know about you, what would that be?
Well, is that I'm currently living very, very close to I'm on the side of a mountain and the forest is right there. And if you suddenly hear a dog going crazy, that's because another bear is just walking past my house.
Thanks, Eric, for sharing. That's wonderful. We also have our friend Andrew Holland joining us. He's the IT manager at Unified Alloys. Andrew, a couple words?
Just want to say thank you for the wonderful help, Eric. And we've been using your product now for a couple of months, I'd say, and it makes life for doing reporting a lot easier.
Appreciate it.
And Andrew, one thing about you that you're willing to share.
Well, I'm sorry, but that became a trick question. I don't live on the side of a mountain. I live here in wonderful Edmonton. And if you hear or see a little 4-year-old run in here, it's because he's just getting home from bicycle camp in the next little bit and usually tries to run in and tell me all about his day.
Awesome.
There we go. The benefits of COVID, the benefits of working from home. So appreciate that, Andrew. Thanks for sharing. Great. So why don't we jump into the agenda? I'm going to talk a little bit about EFOQUS, who we are and what we do. I'm then going to introduce you to the Cloud Replicator app, again, talking a bit about the use cases, the concepts behind it, the features, etc. We've also got, again, Andrew Holland, who's going to be speaking to us about, again, his experience with the app. And then, of course, we are going to have Eric take us through a live overview of the product itself, and then we're going to jump into a live Q&A. So a little bit about EFOQUS. Take a deep breath. Our client-first approach to technology projects means that we take a genuine interest in your business and your success, delivering the to your namaste. So the company, again, was founded by Eric and another Danish guy, Lars. We are both supporting Dynamics Business Central as well as CRM. We have developed a number of different extensions, add-ons available on Microsoft's Marketplace, AppSource, really cool apps such as the SharePoint connector, advanced cloud security, advanced intercompany, lots of great apps. So come check us out on AppSource. I'd like to just share with you a quote from one of our really great customers, Josh from Absolute Results. He says that there's a lot of vendors in the marketplace, none with the breadth and depth of EFOQUS. In his words, he says, "My only regret is that we didn't find you guys sooner." So thank you, Josh. And this brings us to our first poll for today. So in just a moment, we should have a poll pop up on your screen. And the first is going to be really all about where are you joining us from? So the poll itself, I guess it'll probably determine if you're a business on top and party on the bottom. I don't know. But again, we've got guests joining us from all over the world. So let's get your answers in, and would love to see where a majority of our participants are coming from. So Andrew, would you reckon a guess of the poll options? Where do you think most of the representation would be from?
Reckoning a guess, I'm gonna say North America and Europe because, to my knowledge, that's where the majority of Business Central implementations are. So
there you go. That was a fine guess. We'll just give everybody a few moments to get their results in, and then we'll have Erica just pop it up when it's all done. Great. Okay, looks like the poll is closed. And wow, very interesting. It looks like we've got 78% joining us from North America, and we have an even split between 11% of Europe and 11% in Asia as well. So there you go. Really appreciate you guys sharing that. It's always nice to know exactly where you guys are joining us from. So that's wonderful. So let's move on. Going to talk a little bit about the history, the evolution of the app itself, and really what kind of makes it special. So this app is more than just replicating the data that you have in your Dynamics 365 Business Central. You also have the ability to transform the data as well, and transforming the data to make it more easier to be able to create comprehensive reporting. In addition to that, you also now have the ability to be able to report across multiple entities within Business Central. Again, a lot of the reporting tools, again, are at the entity level. So again, reporting across multiple entities, this app makes it that much more simpler to do. And finally, you have the ability to be able to offload your data to a location that is more accessible and faster. Ultimately, you really don't want to have your Business Central cloud tied up with tying up the resources for producing reports. You want to be able to allocate that resources, of course, for transactions and ensuring a good experience for your users. So we can take this data, offload it, and again, be able to create very, very comprehensive reports. And this is actually a really great segue to dive in deeper into the features and the use cases. And we are going to have Eric lead us and talk a little bit more about the concept behind the Replicator app and again, share with how the inner workings of the app work. So Eric, I'll just bring the next slide and take it away.
Thanks. And as Mark was saying, the whole idea behind this app is to make reporting easier. Make reporting, and by easier, that's a kind of a loaded statement, because what's easy, but what we mean by easy is that we try to look at the data needed from a reporting perspective more than the data available from an application perspective. If you, I'm just going to remote control Mark here, and so I say click, and then I'll
Sure.
just ask him to go to the next slide. So let's do that right away, because these points on this slide was actually being covered a bit later. So the first concept I need to introduce to you guys is a document database. So what we have behind the scene for cloud users, it's kind of invisible. For on-prem users, it's there and available. Is a SQL database, and a SQL database is very structured. A SQL database, everything sits in a table, and within a table there are columns defined for those other fields. This is a great structure for operating in. This is a great structure for doing queries and searching and so on, but it's not necessarily a great structure for unstructured data. And unstructured data might again be the wrong term, but what we have in reality, what we have in Business Central is a data set that is easier to access if it were just a tiny bit more unstructured. And unstructured means that let's say we have a document that has been posted, and this document has 5 different dimensions on it. Then we have another document posted that has 7 dimensions on it. Those 5 and 7 dimensions might not be the same. So if you need to be structured and cover all your dimensions, then you need to make sure that you're within the shortcuts and there are columns for it, and it gets complicated. And suddenly somebody in accounting says, oh, we're adding another dimension to control something, and that dimension doesn't show up anywhere because it has never been structured to be accessible for reporting. So what we're doing with a cloud database is that we're kind of taking the BC data and then putting it into a less structured setting. And so I'm later on in the presentation, I'm going to use 2 words, and just want to make sure that we're on the same page, because in the document database world, people often talk about a collection. That's kind of the same thing as a table. And within a collection, you have documents, and the translation here again is that that's actually a record. So we take a record in a table in BC and we put it into a document in a collection in a cloud database. So just to make sure that we're using the same words. Mark, you can click again. So the overall structure of the app is that we have in the center, we have a piece called the replication worker or replication engine. This is the piece that is responsible for taking data from Business Central and uploading it into a cloud document database. The replication workers / engines can be either, you can run them manually, or you can schedule them from a job queue. So you can set up a job queue to run every 2 hours or once a day or whatever you want. And the replication workers will replicate whatever has been changed since the last time they ran on that specific entity. When they're running, they're not just moving data from A to B mindless. I'm not sure that's a word, but data is actually transformed. So since the idea is that since we're grabbing data from BC, we have the data in hand before we deliver it to the document database. We have the opportunity to manipulate. That's perhaps a negative loaded word. We have the opportunity to transform the data into something that's reporting friendly, because we're handling it anyway. And I got a couple of more slides on the actual transformation, so I'll save that for a bit. But this is the base structure of what goes on. So the idea is that you can have multiple engines running, multiple workers running, and it becomes a mouse and cat game, whatever they call it, figure out how much resources you can pull out of BC and how much resources, how hard we can pump data into whatever cloud database we have. BC has a built-in limitation of 100 worker threads. So we can never get above 100 workers unless we're on-prem and are allowed to change the numbers. But other pieces in BC are also using background threads, so we might not get 100 in total, even though we might have the data to use 100 workers. And whatever cloud database we are putting data into might get annoyed with us if we're pumping too much data in too fast. So figuring out the number of workers is something that you have to tweak as you run the app. If you click Mark, then let's go to the next one. So this is almost the same as we just saw. So the difference is here is that now we have 3 different companies. And we can set up the replicator to replicate from all companies or specific companies, but the replicator will replicate from multiple companies into the same cloud database, into the same collection, into the same table, meaning that the company name becomes a field in the target database. So if we have 4 companies and we are replicating general ledger entries that used to be 4 different tables, then they will end up in one table with the company as a dimension, so to speak, as a field, making it much easier to do the multi-entity reports because you're only working with one data source. If you click again, Mark. So again, almost the same slide as what we had, but this time you can see that the boxes on the left change to be tenant or environments, meaning that if you have a scenario where you have multiple BCs either running in the clouds, multiple BCs installed in the cloud, or multiple on-prem BCs running in different places, they can all replicate to the same cloud database. So again, same principle as with companies, just scaled out to the tenant level. So if you have separate installation, you can still replicate into the same cloud database, again, making it much easier to do cross-entity reporting because everything ends up in the same place. Click again, Mark. One of the things that we are doing in the transformation department is the concept of creating a time series. So what we have in Business Central are flow fields, and flow fields are the greatest thing ever. And we get an instant calculation of something, and we can apply flow filters and so on. But certain flow filters are actually a point in time information because they are dependent on, in this case, what I have on screen is customer due information that are dependent on entries being opened or closed and stuff like that. So going back and say, okay, what was the amount due last week, it suddenly becomes a very, very complicated calculation. And if anybody else ever have looked into the report, the customer aging report, they know that it's a mess. But what the replicator will do is that we can take a snapshot. So every time we run, we can tell it to make a snapshot of a certain table, like the customer table. So we get a complete copy of the customer table per day, meaning that we can go back and then in the cloud database filter on a specific customer, then we can see how the sum fields looked on this customer over a period of time. Again, making timeline charts and stuff like that way easier and more accurate than what we could do if we were trying to unravel the transactions. Click again. See how many I got here. Another thing that so now we're into the transformation engine, and what a lot of reporting tools love are a flat structure. If you have too many relations between data, then most reporting tools will ask you to do a big join at the beginning or define how everything is put together. But we can let the Cloud Replicator do that. So in this case, we have record A that has a relation to record table B and table C, and what the replicator, that the transformation engine will do is say, okay, and we call this unfolding. So we're taking this might be like the chart of account record on a GL ledger entry. So we can take the fields from the related record and put down into the record. So the fields that are on relation B here will become fields in the A record. I know this is kind of theoretical and technical, but think about this, that instead of having to work with the big relations and trying to do all that on the reporting side, you just get a flat record that's easy to work with on the reporting side. And all this is pure setup. This is not something that we have done. This is not something that I have decided what to do. This is all set up, and I'll show that later. So click again. So click again. I forgot. Here we go. So another thing we have are dimensions. I mentioned those earlier. And in general, when we're looking at the data, we have the two global dimensions. Those two fields are everywhere. But other than that, we just have a dimension set tagged on an entry. So in this case, I have two different examples here. We have a record that has dimension set number 248, which has a global, a shortcut, and a dynamic dimension. So this transaction happened to be tagged with 3 dimensions. So what the unfold dimension sets function will do is that it will take those 3, it will find the dimension values and add them in as fields on the whatever record we're coming from. So making, no matter what columns we're talking about, or no matter what dimensions we're talking about, making those dimensions just normal fields. So if you have a transaction with 25 dimensions, you'll get 25 fields. If you have like, so the second example here is dimension set 423. That has a global and 2 dynamic dimensions, and they will just become fields. And this takes advantage of the fact that we are in a document database where we don't need to have predefined what columns we have. So when a reporting tool looks at the data and say, oh, there happens to be these columns in this data, and then you'll just run with the columns that are there without having a true database schema setting and complicating stuff. Click again. So one of the things we also mentioned was the fact that another purpose of this app is to offload stress. not on necessarily on the users, but certainly on the system. So if you have reporting tools that are constantly querying the OData endpoints to grab the data, that can be a performance hog and bog down your system. Especially if some report now thinks it needs to read every single GL ledger entry or stuff like that. So the idea is that, you know, in a single call, we move data from BC to the cloud database, and then whatever traffic happens and how much activity there are on the reporting side, it only hits cloud database. It doesn't affect your BC, so your BC can run and work on what's important for that one. I think that was the last of the technical slides.
That's great, Eric. Thank you so much for you know, covering off some of the important technical aspects, the concepts of the app itself. I think it's essential for all of us, and I think you know, things get really exciting once we kind of jump into the product itself, which we'll do in a moment. But first, actually, a really exciting part of this segment of this webinar is to learn a bit more from Andrew Holland at Unified Alloys. To get some firsthand experience, some insights into that. So Andrew, thanks again for joining us today, and we appreciate your time.
No problem. So I'm Andrew Holland. I'm the IT manager with Unified Alloys. We're a distribution company. We distribute stainless steel and corrosion-resistant alloys piping products, such as pipe fittings, valves, flanges. Basically, if you've ever been in a processing plant that handles liquids, all that big, shiny, gleaming metal, hopefully we sold it to them, and if not, you can talk to our sales department. We went live with Business Central last October with another company, and the decision was made to be 5 independent companies. So we're headquartered in Alberta, but we have offices in Vancouver, Ontario, Montreal, Toronto. But we set up as 5 independent companies. And in terms of reporting, that has actually been a big problem. I'll let Mark continue.
Yeah, well, that sounds great, Andrew. Appreciate it. I do have a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind. So why don't we jump into that? What issues were you guys having before you found the app?
Yeah, basically complexity. Being in a multi-company configuration to run one report, just to see just as an example, what our overall revenue is. We actually have to run 5 reports and then in some other tool put them together. Or we have to do some really complex calculations within Power BI to be able to put all that together and graph it on a daily basis. I get into this a little bit farther, but our finance users actually have access to do all their own reporting. We as IT don't do the majority of it, but we were getting to the point where the data structures within Business Central were just becoming a little too complex for even well-trained users to be able to query against dimensions across 5 companies with multiple dimension sets because they're different in each company, and just ask the question, how much do our large customers buy? That is actually within Business Central, the way it's established, a hard thing to do in Power BI.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great, Andrew. Thank you for sharing. Next question here is, how has the Cloud Replicator app impacted your organization's abilities to be able to create sort of comprehensive reporting?
So we use the Cloud Replicator to take away a lot of that complexity that we were talking about. We've created what I call a mini data warehouse of a lot of different common tables that have already been pre-formatted in such a way for easy access by our finance department. So the unfolding that Eric was talking about to bring the customer information straight onto the sales order information so they don't have to do a join, being able to do the dimension set unfolding so that all of those just become fields. You don't have to worry about going through dimension sets to dimension option values, or whatever the name of the table is. Basically taking all that, abstracting it away into his Eric's and EFOQUS's utility, and getting rid of all that and making it easy for them to report on. And doing the daily exports, doing the time series graphs makes like the daily graph of revenue really easy, because all you're doing is adding up 5 GLs on a daily basis, and it handles all the daily basis stuff instead of having to do some complex DAX in order to make it all work.
Absolutely. It's not like anyone would come to you Monday morning saying, hey, look, I need a report that looks like this and I need it by 10 o'clock. Not that you've ever seen that before.
Not that I've ever seen that before. I'm going to skip your slide for just a second. The simplicity, yeah, it's my favorite thing about Cloud Replicator, is the simplicity of it, and the fact that it takes away so much complexity and being really simple. The full configuration of our mini data warehouse took maybe 2 hours of my time. Took longer for the system to sit there and chug through and process it all, but my time is maybe 2 hours investment. Adding a table, unfolding fields, linking all the data sets. For anybody who's worked with that in Power BI, that takes time. In this product, it took a few clicks. The field actions, which is what Eric will be explaining, are simple and straightforward. If my users need a new table exported to the warehouse, if they ask me Monday morning, which they've done, by lunchtime, they're creating their report. The data's already there. It only took 5 minutes of my time to add the new table to the configuration, click go, run a manual sync, and the system chugs through it for a little bit, and away they go.
That's wonderful. Andrew, thank you so much for sharing. I think that that insight is very, very valuable to all of us. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks, Andrew.
Great. So this actually brings us to the next portion of the webinar today, and that's actually the live demonstration. So very excited about this. What we'll do is we will have Eric show or share his screen, and we will go for a test drive.
Let me know if you see my screen. Do you see my screen, Mark?
I do.
Looks great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Okay. So here we have a Business Central version 18, and this one has Cloud Replicator installed. But I would actually like to start somewhere else. I would actually like to go into Azure, the Azure portal, because we need somewhere to put our data. And what I'm using for this demo is Azure Storage. So I have a storage account that I've called EFOQUS Lake, because Lake is apparently a very fancy word right now for data warehouses. So this is just a storage account, and a storage account supports different types of storage. It supports containers, files, and but it also supports tables. And we can see that there are tables in here because I already did some stuff. But the only thing I actually did in here was to go in here and create a storage account. The storage account has a name, the storage account has a URL, and there are some access keys involved. So when I go into BC and I go into the Cloud Replicator setup after I installed the app from AppSource, what I can do in here is that I can specify this is the storage account I'm working against. This is the well, at least part of the secret key to this one. And that's kind of enough. There's a couple of fields up here, but let's ignore those for now. We can see that I have configured that I want a maximum of 50 engines to run. And I want the field name for you remember I told that that the company would become a field name, and in my system it's called _ company name, the field we are adding. So with that out of the way, I'm basically ready to go in and check the table mapping. So this is where Andrew would be adding a new table if his users asked, and it's fairly straightforward. You specify the destination, and currently the app is supporting 3 different destinations. We're supporting Azure Table Storage, which we're using now. We're also supporting Azure Cosmos DB, either through the Table DB API, which is basically just a high performance version of the table storage, or the document API, or core API, sometimes they call it. And as you can see that we added a couple of teasers saying that what we really want to do is support more destinations in the future. So anyway, you select, and the idea is also that we can do export to multiple sources if we need to, or multiple destinations, sorry. We specify table, and we specify a company filter. And if there's no company filter specified, then it will replicate for all companies. So you can see that the company table I have told only to replicate the list of companies for Cronus, because I don't need 5 copies of the list of companies. I can do with just one list of companies. All the other tables I'm exporting for all my companies. The per day checkmark is all that's needed. In this case, you can see that I have per day activated for a general ledger account. So checking this will create the second table. If we go back and look at the tables we had here, you see we have GL account and we have GL account series. And the GL account series is the time series that will be created just because we're checking this one off. Then there is whether this table is active or not. And now we come into the fun part, the field actions, the transformation engine. And let's look at GL entry. So we can see that currently, no, what did I do? I clicked on something that currently we have 8 field transformations activated. Field transformation, well, field actions activated on this one. The GL account I'm actually unfolding means that we will take whatever fields we have defined on the GL account and also add them to every single GL ledger entry record, so we have those fields available. We have also told that the field 480, the dimension set ID, should be unfolded. And then we have told that since we're doing this, there's no reason to have a field called shortcut dimension 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, because we are actually adding the dimension fields as needed. So those are excluded. On the GL account, you can see we have a whole bunch of field actions here. And that's because I've actually used a add all, exclude all functions to kind of, I want to specify exactly what fields I need. So I want name, number, and name. I don't need the search name field. Account type, I would like that to be as captions instead of, so an option field in Business Central is behind the scene covered by a number. So the first one is number 0 and so on. And sometimes that's best because then it's easier to query with everything that's 4 till 7. But in other cases, it would be nice to have the options available so we can select a field action that will will show the caption instead of just the position of the option. Then there's some fields that I don't need, so I have excluded them. Others default means that they are just there. I could delete the line with default and it would work just the same. Let's see what else we have down here. So field number 34 is the totaling field on a GL ledger, sorry, a GL account. And that's kind of a filter saying this account to this account. So if I go into the chart of accounts, come on BC, get rid of notes. Let's do this guy. Let's get rid of the notes since we have find something with a totaling. Oh, stupid. Oh, there we are. So in this case, this is a filter statement, and 11,100 ... 11,700. That is pretty hard to work with in a reporting tool that doesn't know about BC's filter syntax. And we're not limited to just ... There can be vertical lines and all that stuff. So this is a true filter. And if you get the value of that and need to parse that in your reporting tool, that's just hard. But what we can do here is say unfold totaling, and then you will actually get a comma separated list of all the accounts included, which is way easier to work with on the reporting side. So if you need to do fancy stuff with levels of the chart of account, this makes it way easier. Let's see if there's any other fun ones here. I don't think there is. It's all just exclude, include. We have some other ones. I won't go into detail of those, but the idea is that a field will have an action, and since we're moving data, we're transforming it anyway. The last you saw over here is there's basically the log. So if I go in and take a look at whatever replication we had, you see there's something that's failed. Let's go to the top. I'm gonna make this just a tad smaller. So you can see here that replication has run table something, engine something within the company, destination, how many records were replicated. An interesting thing here is that replication is typically fast. You see, just before we started it, I did a replication and it ran through my 5 companies on this one, and I happen to have posted 19 general ledger entries since the last time I ran replication. So I got 19 records replicated in those 4 companies, and it took, well, less than 2 seconds. And those are running at the same time. But if you look down here, you can see that on Monday, I ran and if we scroll down further, we can see that we'll see a reset at some point here. So I reset this table and ask it to replicate again. And the Cloud Replicator recognized that, hey, GL ledger entry has a simple primary key, just an integer. And in the setup, I have the option. So, okay, if you have those scenarios, you're starting out for fresh replicating something like that, we can split the table. And in this case, I have told it to split the table into 100 records chunks. And those 100 record chunks are then running in parallel and replicating each engine, each worker is replicated in 100 records. How long the more parallel calls you make, the less speed you get per record, of course. but I have measured on this one, but on a cloud tenant that by parallelizing, is that a word? I think it is. That I can get around 25,000 records a second replicated with approximate 50 workers. You might run into, and I know Andrew has run into something where then something is going to give at some point. And then you schedule another replication to run it again, perhaps with fewer workers or more resources. You also on the database side, on the destination, select whether you want a standard performance or premium performance, and there are differences in prices. I won't get into the difference in prices here, but in general, the asset storage accounts are quite cheap compared to anything else storage perspective. So that's the core of it. So as Andrew was saying, though, if we need to do something more, we add another table. We can hit a manual run and that run, or we can schedule it in the job queue. So how does it look? Well, let me switch over to Power BI. So here is a report running on the data you just saw. And in this case, we have a cross-company summary report. So we have the chart of account. We have a column for each company. We have a total column. We have options for slicing, as the word is in Power BI, slicing on dimensions, no matter what kind of dimensions it are. There are global, doesn't matter at this point, a dimension is just a dimension. So I can go in and say home, and then my report is changing. And there's unfolding capability in the structure, because we have the totaling that was unfolded. So the relationship between the accounts are known, and therefore we can put them into structures like this, so we get a nice collapsing overview of our GL. I'm looking at the time and saying that's probably the end of the demo. So otherwise we don't have any time for questions.
I appreciate it, Eric. Thank you so much for sharing. I think that, having been in the industry for a while, it's been exciting to see some movement, something new, from a reporting ability for Business Central. So I think this was very exciting to see. And that actually brings us now to the next segment of the webinar, which is poll number 2. And I think it's a great segue, because the poll is going to be, again, around what are you guys using today primarily for your reporting tool, your reporting ability at your organization. And we've got some great options here. So we have out-of-the-box reporting, a natural one. Some outside reporting tool sets, so Power BI is option 2, Tableau option 3. I'm going to say a very traditional, especially if you're familiar with Nav in the days of Nav, jet reports, very significant. And of course, finally, Excel, which is going to be natural, as I'm sure many of you are leveraging Office 365, the productivity tools, Excel being a very natural one there. So yeah, very curious to see how things are going to land, but let's hazard some guesses here. So Eric, what would you say would be your top guess here in terms of the options?
I would go with Tableau, but that's perhaps a Canadian thing. So I'm probably not right on that one. But why not?
There you go. Yeah, there we go. So we'll just give everyone a moment or two to get their answers in, and I can see that the numbers are just moving slightly. We are got some interesting results here, actually. So I'll let Erica wrap that up, and then we can find out once the poll is closed to see how it lands.
Oh.
And actually, a question actually, Eric, you showed Power BI, which was wonderful. Now, what if I'm like a mom and pop shop, single entity, I don't have any fancy reporting tool, just using Excel. Is it possible to use the Cloud Replicator app in that scenario?
Yeah. If you switch over to my screen again. Boom. There we go. This is Power BI. So let's grab Excel. So the power of the Microsoft ecosystem is, of course, that we can just grab Azure table storage data from Excel. So I specify EFOQUS Lake, and it will normally ask for the secret key also, but I already did that. So here I am, oh, come on, presented with the tables. So I can just, grab GL entry, and it looks at that. I select transform, so it goes into the data transformation query, power of whatever editor. And I ask it to grab all the columns it can find in the system. So we can see that these are a combination of columns from the GL and the GL ledger entry, because we unfolded that. If we're not seeing all our dimensions, we can say load more, and then it will scan some more records to locate potential dimension fields. I click OK, and I have the data here ready to go into Excel.
Wonderful. Well, and that's a great actually segue in terms of how the results came in. So Power BI came first, Excel came in second, followed by out-of-the-box reporting, which of course is a natural one, and then finally Jet reports, and then Tableau. So that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. That's great. So let's revisit here. Back to my screen over here, and we're going to take you guys now to the next portion of the webinar, which is our live Q&A. So this is wonderful. I'm looking forward to learning more about some of the questions that we've had from the participants today. And so let's just take a quick look. So yeah, we've got questions kind of coming in fast and furious. And oh wow, where do I begin here? Okay, just give me a second. Just open up my screen. Okay, so here's one. You might have said this already, and I do apologize. I can't quite see the asker and in the box that I have in front of me, but you might have said this already, but does this work with BC Online? Or do you have to have a version that will work with NAV or BC on-prem? So a great question. Is this a cloud-only solution? Does on-premise work?
So the app is in app source, meaning that it works on our cloud. It also works on-prem BC version 17 and up. There are some tricks that we're using that were not available in 16 and down. So 17 and up, that's our target for on-prem.
That's great. Okay, just gonna get down to the next one here. Okay, it looks like those are actually just the, oh, here's one here. Are you taking a snapshot per day with inventory as well? And this is from Kim. Great question.
Well, we can do any table in BC. So if you want to do inventory, you can do inventory, and any table can be set up to do the time series. Generate the time series table. It wouldn't make sense to turn on time series for a transactional table. That will just be a space consuming thing without any real benefits. But turning on the time series on the item table makes total sense. Yeah.
Okay, great. Got another question here. You had a lot of focus on multi-entity setups. What if we just have one company?
This works great with one company. There are some very specific benefits and some very specific challenges in the multi-entity world, but all the advantages of the data transformation, all the advantages of having this data offloaded from BC, so you're not bogging down the system and it's available faster. Those are all true for single instance entity. Yeah.
Okay, great. And just rounding up the last few questions here. Yeah, we've got a couple questions just around that BC on-premise and cloud. And to confirm, the Cloud Replicator app does, this solution is compatible for Business Central on-premise version 17 onwards,
Yeah.
as well as the cloud version.
Yeah. So the name, the cloud part of the name means that that's the destination, not the source necessarily.
There we go. And then I've got one last question here on price. And at this time, we have introductory pricing for the Cloud Replicator app. We're offering it at $5,000 USD for a 1-year subscription. Okay. There we go. And I think that concludes the questions that we have today. So that's wonderful. I think what we'll do is we will go ahead and move on. We're just rounding up here. We've just got a few more minutes. So we're going to just now focus on just rounding out the bend here to the end. So again, following this webinar, we will have a short survey. Again, we highly value your feedback. We would love to hear about your experience with the webinar today. And again, we're always looking at improving things. We really want you guys to get your hands on the Replicator app. It is available on AppSource, free to download, free to try. And yeah, whether you're a customer or a partner, go up to AppSource, download it, give it a shot, and let us know how it goes. Again, we have done our best job in terms of thinking of all the different features that would benefit you guys out in the real world. As well as use cases, but there may be some use cases that we haven't thought of. Maybe you have a specific use case. Well, like we have a certain problem, and is it possible to solve it? Reach out to us. You can find us at info@efocus.ca. Again, customer or prospective customer or partner. Again, please reach out to us. We would love to learn more about your particular situation or question, and would be happy to help. So that really brings us to the conclusion of our webinar today. I want to thank you all joining us from all over the world. Again, we are very excited about this. We are very, very pleased that you were able to join us today. So thank you again. We look forward for you guys to join us on our next webinar. And please do reach out to us. Again, info@efocus.ca, or find us on social on LinkedIn or Twitter. Again, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Eric, for sharing your time and experiences with the app itself and allowing us all to learn a little bit more. And have yourself a wonderful day. Goodbye and ciao.